Good evening. This is the Board of Education meeting for which adequate notice under the Open Public Meetings Act was provided by written notice on January 8, 2018 to the Courier News, the Echo Sentinel, the Star Ledger, Tapley the Warren, and the clerks of the Borough of Watchung and the townships of Greenbrook, Long Hill, and Warren. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please. Ms. Burrow? Mr. Collins?
Here.
Ms. Alizia?
Here.
Mr. Fahey? Here. Mr. Hayek?
Here.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Here.
Mr. Martin? Mr. Morrison?
Here.
Dr. Shpilsky?
Here.
And Ms. Pence? Yes. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session in accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. It is hereby resolved with the board moving to executive session to discuss confidential personnel and legal matters, after which action will be taken. It is expected that the matter discussed in executive session will be made public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
You can't pause.
Sorry for breathing.
So are you guys gonna let me know when I can come in?
We're going to start with you.
We're gonna start with that.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
We have some matters that certain board members will have to recuse themselves on. But we
Find that out through a few questions here and there. But we're going to do some additional analysis, so we'll bring it to the board so you guys can see what we're seeing. And then finally, Mr. Dick was there at the meeting and he was talking about, again, Mount Avenue Field, fantastic. It looks pretty good. We're still allowing it one more season to grow. It should be ready for the fall. And then I think let's talk about the active shooter drill with the Board of Education Police Department. And that was basically it.
I'll just add that the IDEX software that Tim was talking about, that was something at last year's workshop in October that Bob Morrison had spoken with them, and he had gone through the various types of extra data or complete data that they could put together in a way that's easily manipulated by our people, do all sorts of comparisons you want to do. And Bob wrote me over to it, and Liz and Tim, and we're excited that it's going to be a real tool for analyzing things in big help. So thank you. Any other questions for Tim or Chris on operations?
Ladies first. Ladies first.
The question on the natural gas prices that you mentioned what we're paying now, Tim, is that a 24-month contract?
That was, the last one was a 24-month, yes.
Yeah.
Would you prefer the future item questions to occur during that discussion or during this discussion?
If it relates to operations committee, might as well be
Go
in.
now.
So, with respect to 9 and the Chromebook investment, if you recall, we've had a conversation at the board about are they being applied well? Are we taking full advantage of the technology? Is there training and supervision to get enhanced use of it? And I don't, and perhaps it was because I was at the last meeting, but I read the notes and I don't think it was talked about then. Do we have any feedback to give us assurance that that's going to happen? Because now we're asked to spend nearly $200,000 on something that I'm not convinced we're using well.
So I have asked Brian and Mike, and actually it was on their agenda with the tech committee today, to do an overall evaluation of the Chromebook program and lay out what the expectations are, what the goals are. I know that they were collecting feedback, they had done the student surveys, and they had to do this, they did the staff surveys, and we're going to do the student surveys. So they are working on all that. It has not been done, but that is something that they are working on, because we do need to clarify what the expectations are with regard to professional development, with regard to teacher use, with regard to student use, and what we expect to see at the end of the first year of implementation, at the end of 3 years of implementation, at the end of 5 years of implementation, because, that was a very good point that came out from those conversations, is that hadn't been clearly articulated. So that is something they are working on.
And is there a time certain as to when there's an expected response or conclusion from them, as opposed to they have as long as they want?
Yes, they have no, they do not have. I actually have to follow up with them. I think it was on their agenda for their meeting today, so I'll be following up with them, and I will give, maybe I'll do that through Ed Committee, since technology falls under that. I can talk to Ed Committee about that in particular, and then report it to the full board.
I would find it helpful before voting affirmatively on it to have a response by that meeting to say, this is what the plan is, and we will have this done by this time period.
In terms of a timeline for developing the plan, or actually having it laid out?
Whatever you can accomplish,
Okay.
understanding that it's only 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you, certainly.
And then, Tim, it's just because of my naivete, looking at some of the bus contracts, I see that there is a total payment, and then there's a partial payment essentially by one of the sending districts and us. How is that accomplished? We've got multiple different bus companies and multiple different contracts. Just if you could give a brief overview as to how that all works.
Essentially, what we do is we'll do the bid for the bus route when we try to triple tier and double tier triple as much as we can, double where we can. So we'll combine our routes with, say, let's take Watchung. Say we're bidding on 5 routes, so we'll try to triple tier those 5 routes. So we'll get prices on the 3 routes, triple tiered routes, and then if one of those routes are ours and 2 of them are theirs, we pay 1/3, they pay 2/3. That's essentially how we go.
So we are sending out the proposal essentially on behalf of them,
Correct.
and then distributing the cost based on usage.
And then they reimburse us the cost. That's how it works.
And I guess they're getting better deals as a result of that, is that?
Yeah, well, we've done pretty well so far. We've had a big glitch last year. Unfortunately, that was something I kind of heard wrong a little bit, the way it played out, but they eventually got it. I think they got it.
We didn't have a big one, somebody else did.
It was, well, I'm just saying, it was a big glitch, but
Yeah.
it happens. But it has worked out very well for all of us.
Thank you.
Any more questions on operations? Do you have any more in the financing report?
You're earning your pay tonight, Tim.
I know.
We did cover a lot of ground as well.
Yeah, with that.
Just a hang out there, do you want me to?
Okay, well, I'll go to the Booster Club second. The Booster Club handbook is something that we've been working on with the Booster Club Alliance, our volunteer parents. We just changed a few things in there. Specifically, we talked about the ability to use GoFundMe and SnapRaise as options, but limited. The GoFundMe would be only for the larger Booster Club Alliance, whereas the SnapRaise, we could use it every other year, but it can't be the same group using it every year. So those are things we put into this the Booster Club handbook. It's not much different than where it was years ago, so it's not a vastly different document. The Booster Club Policy 9191 is something we've talked about forever. We've made some revisions to the policy that are on the agenda. I think, we tried to consolidate things, take things out that really don't apply. Like we had terminology there about team meals, and it's really not relevant. It's only relevant to certain sports. And frankly, if you just say, you got to adhere to the policy, you got to adhere to the handbooks, you got to adhere those kind of things, it kind of covers team meals anyway. So those are kind of, things that we really didn't need in there. I don't know why we had them in there, to be honest. So we tried to eliminate language that didn't make any sense, was duplicated. The one thing that I'll point out in the policy that's kind of important to look at is really what our aim is here. Our aim is, we're trying to, say control, but we're trying to at least rein in some of the wild, wild west, as I call it. The booster clubs, sometimes they do things we don't know about, and we're liable. We can't escape what they do. They are an extension of us, like it or not. It's just reality. So they're doing things with our name sometimes, and we don't know, but still, it's our name. And if we find out about it, someone else finds out about it. Anyway, so the bottom line is we're trying to rein it in. So the language that we really needed in the policy, the things that we want to stress about, and this is what we need support from, is essentially three things. They have to have the 501c3 or be part of the overarching booster club. The idea is to generally get them all into that overarching booster club in time. But right now, we're not going to get everybody, we know that. So they have to adhere to the 501c3, they have to file the correct tax returns, both state and federal, if state is needed. They have to have insurance, show proof of insurance, and what's the third thing? I think they have to have, hold on one second.
They have to have insurance to approve by the board.
Yeah, no, the insurance, like, is one other thing. That's it, finally, right?
Yes.
Yeah. okay.
Should tax returns.
The tax returns, okay, I think that was it. Here's all.
There's three.
Oh, they have to adhere, they have to certify and to adhere to all of our policies. And the attorney just asked that I revise this. I talked to him. He thought that I should write, or we should write, board policy, that they had to adhere to the board policy specifically, board policy 5521, which is harassment, intimidation, and bullying, board policy 5830, which is people fundraising, and the Booster Club operating manual, and NJSIAA guidelines. So he wanted to specifically impress, actually he really wanted to impress and add 5521 with the key. He wanted to add the piece about harassment, intimidation, and bullying to make sure that the booster clubs are aware that this is a priority of the board.
I'm lost on, forgive me if I can't figure out on the drive, where the policy is, should I pull it right now, look at it?
Is it,
Ninety-one.
Policy?
No, but like, is it in our agenda, like,
Yeah,
is it
so
attached
go
to
to
the agenda?
Attachment AA.
and it's in the two
Okay.
policies.
All right, thank you.
there's two, it's AA and there's two policies. The first one is that
Thank you.
6311. And the thrust of, I guess, the thrust of the Booster Club policy is to make sure they adhere to those items. I think there are groups out there that may not be. And I think we want to really rein them in and say, send the notice out to them saying, look, if you're not adhering to this, you're not allowed to do this, period. Or you can join the overarching Booster Club. So we're trying to make it so, either you're part of this overarching Booster Club. If you want to have your own, you better be perfect on these filings. So that's the thrust of what we're trying to push on this. We have a pretty good group of folks that have spent a lot of time setting up this Booster Club. Anyway, so another thing we talked about is the idea that I had heard at a seminar, there are districts who actually help pay for some of the accounting services. I threw it out to the committee, and the only reason I bring it up is it is a way so we can understand and know that you're doing the right thing. And have our accountants extend that service. The question is whether the board can actually pay for it, number one. And if the board desires to pay for an outside entity's accounting fees. That's a trickier question. When I talked to our auditor, Gary Vinci, to see if he'd be willing to do something like that, how much it would cost, he's going to give me prices. But he was a little lukewarm to the idea to begin with. just thought that public entity, you gotta be careful spending money, spending that type of accounting fees for the private donation, 501c3 company. So he was a little bit iffy on that one.
Isn't it
Again,
really a compliance thing?
it depends on the amount of revenue they make. If they are under a certain threshold, all they have to do is file these tax returns.
Right.
990 and the state.
What's the threshold?
I don't know.
$200,000.
So we could
So
do
if
that.
it's over 200, they have to.
They have to have an audit.
That's where it gets.
So actually, by us offering an audit, we may never have to pay for that unless they raise $200,000.
I don't know if we're offering. it.
No, he was
No.
talking about the fees for setting up, I think.
No.
No, the fees were actually doing the accounting.
It's doing the accounting, but doing the accounting is something different than actually doing the audit.
The audit's not inexpensive.
Not an expensive.
No, that's the only thing. If it goes, if it is that threshold of 200,000, which it could very well be.
7,500 to 9,000.
Yeah, it can get pricey. So that was one of the things when I talked to Gary, he was like, yeah, I could get pricey to get into that range of $200,000 or whatever it is a
So
threshold.
saving money by doing this, and then you were very, or you were your time, because you were so involved in operating, overseeing these entities, the booster clubs, are we saving anything by establishing this as far as
This thing?
manpower or money?
No, it's purely liability. Right now, it's
And
just-
oversight.
We don't have the oversight that we need to make sure we understand what's going on. There's things that go on, and I hear about from you guys, I hear about from a parent. Like,
Not
what?
to justify the cost, I'm just saying that is there a balance, and there's looking for some balance. And also, I'd like to know if, the state is going to, Jay saying, well, Vince was a little warm about this, maybe we need a legal opinion, is the state going to come down on us for it?
Yeah, well, that he suggested that. He
Yeah.
actually suggested talking to the lawyers about it. and so. But like I said, when it comes to the dollars and cents, not having an understanding of what's going on and a lack of control, it puts us at risk. My coaches are at risk, parents are at risk, kids are at risk, we're at risk. I would prefer to have, as the business administrator, I would prefer to have a little more control over what's going on in terms of fundraising. I mean, it just, everything is fine until it's not. And
And then it's not. it could be-
then when it's not, it could be a huge problem.
So are you or are you not recommending an audit?
Not,
Or you
not,
need more information?
not at the moment, because we need more,
Accounting,
we need more
I'm sorry.
information. I mean, the fact that there may be an audit, I wouldn't recommend that, because the cost is going to be a little bit too much for us. But again, I really need to talk to the attorneys and ask them.
So right now, they're supposed to account to us.
Yes,
The
they,
way this policy is now.
correct. They have to provide certain documents, and the documents I'm going to be asking for are the tax returns, 990 for the Fed and the state. I think there's a charitable registration form that you got to file against the state. So those two forms were.
And that information they already know, or you have to give them that information?
Well, excuse me.
Do they already know this information, all the booster clubs? Is this
No.
new, this whole thing about?
This policy has been on the books.
Okay, Was it just
Has
the
it been
accounting?
enforced perfectly? No.
okay, because the accounting was in black, so that's why I was unclear,
Yeah,
if it was there before.
that wasn't. It was.
Annually account to the board for all approved fundraising activities is in black, so I thought that was new.
That I just shifted it. That was there.
Okay,
A lot of this stuff, some of the stuff was there. It was duplicated. It was in different spots.
okay,
So I kind of moved it around to make it a little more cohesive.
okay.
But again, the first part is kind of the key part, is what we're looking for, those three documents.
Right.
The idea too was to make it more attractive for more organizations to join the
Right,
operation.
right.
By realizing they're not gonna have to spend all their hard-raised money on
Yeah,
accounting.
accounting, right,
So it
right,
makes it more attractive.
right,
And it gives us the information we need to make
right,
sure.
and it makes it easier to control, I get it.
So yeah, that was the idea. Again, that little nuance of the dollar amount, if it goes over the threshold, that you need an audit, then that's a bigger deal.
Was there any discussion of having the club itself be responsible for auditing fees as their right to participate? Or alternatively, if you're going to be on your own, you're responsible for that cost if you hit that threshold, and not if you're part of the overarching booster club, if the intent is to move them there as an incentive to do so. Second, in the booster club handbook, I saw a commentary in the minutes about potential consequences if you don't follow policy. Is there somewhere where those consequences are specified, where it could be argued that it's an arbitrary decision for one versus another, as opposed to if you do this, expect the following? If we don't have that, it probably should be there. And I think finally, in the policy itself, it talks about nonprofit, but doesn't specify 501c3, just a minor edit. I don't know whether that ought to be there. I would figure our attorney would pick that up, but maybe not.
He had, which,
So that's on the A attachment, page 2, first bullet point. It just says be incorporated as a nonprofit organization. And most documents that I see specify 501c3
Or whatever tax, line that you want it to be. I just didn't see.
yeah,
what kind of expense.
technically a 501c3, but we could add that. They didn't mention that, no.
And if I could just piggyback on Greg's first point, assuming we're talking about $200,000 threshold, my expectation would be that if the booster club's raising that much money, that they will have the $7,500 to $9,000 necessary to pay for their own auditing. And so I would want there to be a board discussion before, we jumped onto that auditing issue, certainly.
Right. You have to send me that, exactly what you were suggesting, because I thought that was a good idea.
Which one?
The consequences. The consequences if,
Gotcha.
So or the incentive to bring other folks
Oh,
in.
got it, okay.
Because the word is great.
Yeah, we'll see if I can come up with it.
Yeah, so I mean, this is this is something that's been worked on forever. But I'll take any suggestions for the policy that make it better. And certainly the penalty issue was the one we were talking about. I think in the policy we do mention it's soft, but it says something to the effect that we reserve the right to disallow any booster club organization from fundraising opportunities associated with the school. Again, the language.
And I think Greg's point is, let's at least ask our attorneys if that's a little too vague to invite an arbitrary capricious attack if we were ever to apply it.
What's the board's pleasure on that one? I mean, if you ask me, I would probably be a little harder on
I'm
that.
not even sure what their repercussion is like.
Yeah.
They're not students, they're not staff.
Well, they just wouldn't be allowed
can't
to use.
participate, they can't use
No,
one.
how do they like bring it on training capriciously? Not clear.
Yeah, right, it's not clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is just to stop the fundraising or make them stop what they're doing.
Right.
They can't use the school logo, the whole thing.
Right, no, I get that. I'm just saying, how would they even challenge it?
How would they challenge it?
But my question to our board council would be, we put this in our policy, is there any chance it's gonna be effective?
Yes. And, what would a challenge mechanism be for a booster club? I don't even know.
We're going to bring that one back to committee and we can
No,
talk about
I
that.
that's a bring that to Mark.
Yeah.
And then we'll go with the committee and add some values.
Yeah.
Maybe a an arbitrary breaches.
But would the board rather have this in the policy or in the handbook? I mean, that's the only thing I don't know.
In the policy or in the handbook is the question.
I would say in the policy. Would have more,
Well, actually, in the regulations, we have more.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if there could be a separate regulation assuming this.
We don't have one now.
We don't have one
Took us about 3 years to get there.
Yeah, I like, yeah. We gotta pass
I think
something.
it's about 10 to get that breakdown issue done, but you can,
Chris and I worked on that, it's like 6 years ago.
yeah.
Well, I think the answer then is let's, we're making baby steps, let's try and get as much as we can in the policy now, and then if we need a regulation,
Yeah.
it'll be easier to write once we have a policy.
Well, we also didn't go too harsh because we wanted to bring them in voluntarily first.
Right.
And then, as time goes by, those that refuse to join will be forced to join, or they won't be allowed to fundraise.
Yep, and that's something we may be able to do by enforcement of, having the harsher requirement in there, but
If it's in there, you have to enforce it.
I'll let our board counsel pass on that, but I think you've got discretion as to how far you have to go in trying to enforce them. You would still make a decision as a board.
I'll take it to the attorney and I'll ask.
Anything else on alternative financing?
And we just had a very general conversation about fundraising, and where we could seek donations from, and we talked about alumni and those type of initiatives. So that was it.
Okay. ESLRs?
So everybody has so let's see, SLRs. These did go through economic council?
No, not yet.
Okay, all right. So right now, it's feedback from the board that we're looking for, and then it'll go back to academic council. But it did go through the committee a couple times and through administration, trying to take all our suggestions and kind of put them in place.
Yeah, the
Some
committee's
of the
feedback is
ideas
helpful.
were to make sure there wasn't a huge amount of them under each section. Also to make sure they weren't duplicative throughout, like sometimes you would see them, the same type of sub-point in different areas, and make sure everything was in its right spot. Try to make sure that they really weren't core curriculum content based, because we have a core curriculum core curriculum, and we don't need that to be in here. And that they were specific but general, sort of in a way, like you were looking for that happy medium so that they were enough that somebody could look at them and say, okay, I can apply this in all of my coursework, but at the same time, they're specific enough under each of the different sections. Because each one of these sections are supposed to apply across the board for each type of teacher or each type of course that someone is teaching. So that they can be applied. The idea is to apply them in the classroom.
And the idea of having it on tonight's agenda is the members of the ESLR committee had a couple meetings and given feedback to try and help the administration pare these down. If anyone else wants to weigh in with any suggestions, please feel free to do so in the next 2 weeks. Any questions on ESLRs?
So, just from a process standpoint, Liz, when will this go to academic council, or is there another, you guys gonna spend a little bit of time dusting them up, or?
It's, you know what we had said at the last committee meeting was before we did anything else with them on our end, we wanted to give the board an opportunity, so, I'll kind of take my lead from you guys on what you want that to look like, how much time we want to give the board to give feedback.
Computers,
So once that happens, are we convening as a committee again, or is that the point where then you want me to hand them back to the teachers that these initially came from to take a look
I
at
thought we
them?
were going back to academic council.
I think we may want to, once we get the board feedback,
Yeah.
just have one more quick committee meeting so that then we're comfy with it going to academic
Let's say
council.
if there is board feedback in the next 2 weeks, that we will do that.
Okay, what I will do is I will reconnect with the ESLR committee in 2 weeks, whatever our status is, and then we can determine what the most appropriate next steps are. Sounds good. And yes, don't flood my email inbox with all of your feedback. I'm sure I'll have trouble managing it all. The feedback from the committee members, I really do appreciate. They spent time with them and, you know, really gave some very good feedback that, you know, you should see it incorporated in there. So it was really, really very helpful. So I really appreciate those of you that were on there taking the time to read through it. You know, it's kind of like being on the policy committee where you're reading just volumes of stuff and trying to give feedback and revise. So thank you.
And with the caveat that it was about the third meeting where I finally started to get my arms around what an ESL is. After badgering Liz.
Expect a school-wide learning result. So he can email me tomorrow.
I know the
Reports
acronym.
later.
Okay,
Citizen application.
we have reached.
No, do you want me to do the,
Representative
Oh,
report.
sorry.
I apologize. Yes.
All right, so the eight council met this afternoon. Pete, Liz and I met with Dr. DiGiovanna and Ken Carnes. And so the union recently conducted another climate survey. And it just closed out this weekend, so the data is being compiled. And the intent is to check in with their members and just to get an idea of what everyone is thinking. This year they requested that the staff identify themselves, so we will not see that, but the union heads know who participated and can read their comments. Because that was an issue in the past. We requested that they pull out the most salient points to convey to us. And they believe that the survey, the responses represent, it's a good cross-section of the school. And there's certain populations, like buildings and grounds, and the bus drivers that are difficult to get because they don't have the emails, so it's hard to get a hold of. This is all done through email, but so we'll be getting results of that shortly. And then we discussed summative evaluations and consistency. So last year, the board requested that summative evaluations be completed by April 30th, so that board members would have an opportunity to review the evaluations prior to the May 15th reappointment deadline. So that, in certain instances, that proved to be a problem for certain departments, and it was very rushed. So the union is requesting that there be an efficient timeline. Some supervisors did get backed up. For example, they were parking in the park. And
I just want to clarify that this was their perspective.
Well, this is that. Did that make that clear? I'm sorry. No? Oh, yeah, no, this is what was conveyed to us. When I am bringing this up, because the board did request, I mean, it makes sense that that deadline exists, but board members do have an opportunity to review the evaluation prior to the reappointment deadline. But so there's just a discussion timelines, and we want teachers, but we do want teachers to feel that they have a chance to respond. So if their evaluation, some of it is completed on April 30th, they don't really have time to respond. But the administration is very lenient with that, and teachers will always have a chance to respond to their evaluations. And that's it. Okay.
Yeah. And as Lisa and Liz pointed out, those were the perceptions of the staff members on Ed Council, and the superintendent was very clear that even if there were some glitches in everybody getting a chance to sit down with their supervisor on the summative and not have a chance to respond by the 30th, that if any responses came in after that, the superintendent would be providing them to any board member who asked to review that person's summative evaluation. And now, I think
Just I'm going to go to that May 19th delegate. Is everybody okay? Like, I don't know that, because a lot of times
Yes.
the president would say, okay, you're the delegate this year.
And
You're okay with it? Okay, all right,
Lisa-
so I'm going.
And Rita reached out to me and said she wanted to go, so.
All in favor?
There's a
So also,
special
I-
case
so
meeting
Rita, when I was representative here and also in Long Hill, I did prepare all the resolutions that to discuss with the board prior so that we could have input into how you vote, but that's okay.
The resolutions are ridiculous.
We have a tremendous amount of trust in you, and we did it, Lisa, but she felt she had to tell us anything.
Okay,
Historically.
that's
So
good.
yes, please attend on our
Oh,
behalf,
yes, I'll definitely tell you what happened then.
as long as you give us the short version.
Yeah.
And now, the first opportunity for public comment. I don't have to tell you guys, it's limited to the agenda item. Seeing none, we will move on. Have more discussion on agenda items.
Mr. President,
Yes.
in the board discussion area, is there any update on board goal dealing with coordination with the sending districts on shared services?
And the only update on that thus far is that I, after much delay, finally last week reached out to the presidents of the sending districts to see if we could set up a meeting at which I would bring up that subject. It's delayed, but it's finally getting started.
Yes, need a location first.
Yeah. Okay, we now have the items on, the future items that are going to be voted on May 22nd. I'll open up the board discussion on any of that.
On A6, not that I have any objection, I certainly support that kind of activity, but it calls into question in my mind, do we have a set budget amount for this? So let's say hypothetically that you have a dozen kids from a bunch of different venues asking for support, and just like in all of our budget items we have on not to exceed, is there some allocation of funds for that kind of activity that's on a first come first served basis? Once it's exceeded, I don't want to be put in a position where you're told you can't do this and somebody comes back and says, well, you did it for X, Y, and Z, why not for me?
You're talking about the preview item number
Preview
6?
A6.
Future 7A6.
That, we are not,
There is a cost for registration that we are
oh,
responsible
I'm sorry, you're
for.
correct, thank you.
And again, it's a nominal amount,
No.
but it just brings up the idea of if we're going to do that for two specific people, there will probably be other specific people that will ask for it, and there ought to be an overall budget amount and limit, and so it's not arbitrary.
That's a recurring conversation that we have. The answer to your question is no, we do not have an established account for those things. We have established a more consistent process for evaluating if it's something that we will pay for versus having the students and parents pay for. And, you know, FBLA is an approved club with a paid advisor. So I would say that it's more, we try to err on the side. We look at the things that we pay for, our registration, we generally don't pay for the travel and those kinds of fees. We have not run into that particular circumstance yet, but it's certainly something that we can talk about, you know, of establishing what our limit is, because we don't currently have that. So it's a good question, because just because it hasn't happened, that pretty much means it will at some point.
So yeah, I don't see an urgency to it, but it ought to be on the plan of having that down.
And the board's always been very supportive of these kinds of things for the students, so I appreciate it, so.
Any other questions on future items for the May 22nd meeting? Or comments or suggestions? If there are none, we can move on to action items.
Mr. President, I'd like to move A1 through A3.
Second.
A1 through A3, Bob?
Yes, sir.
A4.
Oh, A4, I'm sorry.
And Any discussion on resolutions A1 through A4? Hearing none, do we have a roll call vote, Mr. Stoddard?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizia?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
Yes, will abstain, A1, A2.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes, abstain A1, A2.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
Mr. President, I'd like to move C1 through C7.
Second.
Any discussion on resolutions C1 through C7? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Stoddard?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizia?
Yes.
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items D1 through D2.
Second.
Any discussion on resolutions B1 and B2? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Stoddard?
72.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Mizia?
Yes on D1 and on D2, yes for expenses, except for abstain from my expenses.
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes, also on D1, and yes on the items of D2 that don't relate to expenses being reimbursed and made. We're now at the second opportunity for public comment. Close public comment. Other business. Remind all you people packing up that we have an executive session to go back to. Except for Mr. Morrison and Mr. Fahey.
Still.
Yes.
Different, but still, right?
Right.
Yes.
No other business? Could I have a motion?
Motion to
Back
move
into
Back
executive
into
session.
executive.
Good move, though. I would have seconded it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good stuff.